Hey, we are back from my deck tech. I am going to be playing Abzan aggro, but I'm going to be playing it with a little bit of a twist. So we're going to ascend down to the area where the cards are.
That's not what ascend means.
Isn't it?
Ascend goes
We're going to
up.
be descending.
Descending.
There Abzan descendancy. All right. So yeah, basically, I wanted to try to build an Abzan aggro deck that was a lot more kind of streamlined and aggressive than the normal ones, where like the normal ones are still playing things like Sorin and like a bunch of random other cards and stuff, and I wanted to just make it as low to the ground as possible, and I really wanted to also take advantage of the card Abzan Ascendancy. And I feel like that card could be really good in this kind of a deck, and I wanted to try it out, and so I built this list with a lot more 2-drops and cheap creatures to take advantage of Ascendancy.
So, to me, I know Abzan Ascendancy is very good. Like, I've played against it and I've played with it a few times, and it's incredibly powerful, and it gives you 2 different advantages, which is nice. The only thing I'm concerned with is I feel like in a 3-color deck that plays this card, you're going to want to try to just like spew creatures onto the board. And for me, that in my previous years of deck building or whatever, that usually just means playing a bunch of like 1-drops. And you want to like flood the board with 1-drops to make Abzan Ascendancy good, just so you get as many counters as possible. And if those creatures ever die, you get more 1/1 flyers. But I do just like it in the fact that it can make your medium-sized creatures be able to get over things like opposing siege rhinos or Blue-Chronos and things like that. It feels pretty powerful, very Gavany Township-esque, as well as just being able to give you staying power against things like end hostilities and spot removal spells like Hero's Downfall.
Yeah, exactly. So to that end, I've added a couple more Heir of the Wilds and 2 Seeker of the Ways as more 2-drops, and I've been like pretty impressed with Heir of the Wilds, but I didn't want to just max on him because I felt like between Herald of Torment, Thoughtseize, Abzan Charm, Mana Confluence, and the rest of our mana base, that we're probably going to be dealing a lot of damage to ourselves, and we don't really have a good way to gain life back.
Would you say you were dealing death to yourself?
Yes, I am actually.
All right. Sorry, my bad.
So let's Rakshasa along to the next part. We have Rhino to gain some life back, but that's, in my opinion, not quite enough. That's basically just treading water. So I added 2 Seeker of the Ways, and we don't have a whole lot of spells, but I'm hoping that it's enough to trigger his prowess from time to time, and he's also very good with Ascendancy because he can attack for 4 the turn we play Ascendancy.
Yeah, it's also important to note that with any creatures that have Bestow, when you bestow a Herald of Torment onto a Seeker, when it goes onto the stack, it is a non-creature spell, so it does trigger Seeker of the Way, so you get to swing immediately for 6 points flying, life-linking damage, which is huge.
Yeah, that is enormous, and so, it looks like we only have 13 spells, but we actually have 16 if you count these.
Yeah, and plus we have some more in the sideboard, which can, we can reconfigure our deck to make Seeker better against things like Mono Red or whatever. So.
Exactly, yeah. And another neat thing about Seeker, too, is you can cast Drown in Sorrow and your Seeker doesn't die.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
So he only gets him for 1, but he doesn't die.
Yeah, that's fine.
And one thing I want to talk about, too, is Heir of the Wilds, and it's actually very nice, not only with Anafenza and Siege Rhino, which are already 4 power, but you can use Abzan Charm to make something big to turn on the Ferocious, including itself.
Yeah, it took me a little while to really grasp that Heir of the Wilds can trigger off of itself. Like, if you suit him up with like Herald of Torment or whatever, he's going to be attacking for 6 as well. And that's pretty huge when 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 of your 2-drops when suited up with Herald hit for 6 the turn that you do it. Death Dealer hitting for the least, actually, for only 5, but the next turn he's going to hit for much more.
Yeah. And another neat thing you can do, too, is like pump your Death Dealer, then go to combat and trigger Ferocious, or Monstrous or Lion, then go to combat, trigger Ferocious.
Make sure that with this trigger on Heir of the Wilds, you pump your guy before you declare your attacks, because this does check on resolution as well as when you actually declare the attack, and if you don't have a guy that's big enough, it won't even go on the stack.
Right, so like, if you attack with Heir of the Wilds and then pump your Death Dealer, you can't say like, in response to the Ferocious trigger, pump my Death Dealer.
Yeah.
There won't even be a Ferocious trigger.
Yeah, so just make sure you do that before you even attack with Heir to not only eliminate confusion, but just to make sure that it actually goes on the stack.
So there's one thing that's missing from the deck, and that's Hero's Downfall. I wanted...
Card's trash.
Is it?
I mean, it's pretty bad. Abzan Charm is unbelievable.
Yeah. My opinion is similar. I don't think Hero's Downfall is trash, but I feel like in a deck like this, Abzan Charm is just so much better because of what we're trying to do, which is get through with our creatures. It serves as a downfall against creatures that we care about, but it also pumps our guys, draws us some more cards if we're like, running out of gas, does a bunch of other stuff. And then I wanted Murderous Cut because between Thoughtseize, fetch lands, a bunch of cheap spells and creatures, we're gonna fill up our graveyard, and I wanted to be able to do things like play Murderous Cut the same turn we cast Abzan Ascendancy, and just really like use tempo to our advantage.
Yep.
But that's the main deck. Let's go ahead and look at the sideboard. All right, we're back with the sideboard. To start things off, we have 3 Sorin, so they are also absent from the main deck. I almost said Absant from the main deck.
Should have.
Sorin is pretty staple in all the Abzan decks, but I felt like he wasn't actually that good in the Abzan aggro deck, so I don't have him in the main deck anymore. He's now on the sideboard, and I'm going to bring him in against decks like control decks or like aggressive red decks where gaining the life matters a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Sorin out of this deck is not fantastic against mid-range strategies, and like the 2/2 is not entirely relevant, and the +1 is not that great against him either because usually you're either going to lose by a landslide or win by a landslide, and Sorin doesn't really help on either of those ends.
Yeah, he's kind of like another grindy mid-range card in a sea of them that doesn't really set himself above.
Yeah, I mean, I do love Sorin in other decks, but I do agree that in this deck he is not fantastic. So.
Then I have Anissa just as like a one-of for control strategies, basically.
You don't have to convince me about playing Nissa. That's my boo.
Yeah. Nissa's a delight. A couple despises for like the green decks, mostly Green Devotion, but I also bring it in against like Abzan sometimes as well.
Yeah, I mean, Wingmate Rock is a very powerful card.
Yeah, I pretty much exclusively take Wingmate Rock.
Yeah, I mean, you can take Planeswalkers and things like that, so like you can swing the game in your favor just for 1 mana, which is pretty huge, but Wingmate Rock is like one of the best cards in any mid-range matchup.
And then we do a lot of damage to ourselves and everything along those lines, so I definitely respect the red deck. I have 4 Drowned in Sorrows to really F them up a bit. It doesn't kill any of our guys except Heir of the Wilds, and that's it. So
yeah, I mean, you can pump your Death Dealer or just not cast it or whatever on turn 5. So.
A couple of Heroes Downfalls just for when we do get matched up against decks with a lot of Planeswalkers. I want to have some answer to them that's not just like hoping to kill them with my guys, because that doesn't always work.
Yeah.
And then 3 Hunt the Hunters for other green kind of mid-rangey matchups or Green Devotion type deck where I can go like, hunt their Pelucranos and then hit them for a bunch or things like that.
I actually really, with the increase in Teamer decks, a la Brian Kibler, I think Hunt the Hunter is actually just going to be pretty unbelievable. Their deck doesn't have a ton of spot removal spells, and they tap out a lot for things like Knuckleblade or Pelucranos, and being able to just like, pump your Death Dealer, play Hunt the Hunter, kill their Pelucranos attack for 6 is a gigantic play. Not to mention it's a 1 mana way to just kill their early mana accelerators to slow them down enough, and dealing them extra points of damage in the meanwhile. Yeah,
it's definitely relevant because oftentimes those matches turn into a race, and it helps you race and slows them down at the same time.
Yeah.
But that's the Abzan aggro with Ascendancy build. I'm calling it Abzan Ascendancy Aggro Alliteration is awesome.
You forgot alligator.
Apple. All right, let's get to attacking each other.